Will Riley just exploded in his Capital City Go-Go debut. I think he's too good for the G League, but this was the right decision to have him get those reps there. Let's talk about it on Locked On Wizards.
You are Locked On Wizards, your daily Washington Wizards podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
DC family, you're locked on to the Washington Wizards, where you're part of our family. We thank you for making Locked On Wizards your first listen every single day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the nation, where it's your team, the Washington Wizards, every day. Ben Strober taking you through this one today on your Wizards wrap-up. Every single week, if we have a little bit of bonus content for you like we do today, typically around 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to call it the Wizards wrap-up. Shout out to our friends with the Locked On Mavericks podcast. They've coined theirs as one more thing, so I kind of stole the bit, but spun it into my own way. Wizards wrap-up comes to you today because Will Riley, Wizards first-round pick, 21st overall in the 2025 draft, exploded in his Capital City Go-Go debut yesterday. 25 points, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. On 11 of 18 shooting, it was a +7 in the Capital City Go-Go debut for the kid out of Illinois. Super excited to see him get this opportunity to get the reps in the G League. And at the last time that we recorded, we were with Danny Rouillet from the Grant and Danny show. He had yet to been optioned to the Capital City Go-Go. We felt like it was something that might happen at some point throughout the season here with this Will Riley kid, because he's not getting a lot of reps at the NBA level so far. And I know he's flashed at times when he's gotten those opportunities out here for the Wizards. But with that being said, I don't want to see him rot on the bench in a lot of these games, because if Brian Keefe's not going to play him, he needs to get those opportunities somewhere else. And that's exactly what I want to get into today. I think he's too good to be in the G League, if I'm being honest with you. I think he already has the skills that he possesses where he could get minutes at the NBA level, but this was the right decision for the Wizards to have him playing in the G League and get the opportunities to go boost his confidence, showcase himself. Went through and watched some of the tape. Shout out to Riley, who posted this on Twitter. So I got to finally see some of the clips of him. Super impressed with his innate ability to attack the basket, go up, absorb some of the contact, go up and finish. You know, this is a guy with a pretty slight frame in Will Riley. When he entered in the draft process at 6'8", 195 pounds, you knew the weight, the slight frame was something people had some concerns with, but it's not going to be an issue long-term, I don't think. Give him weight room, give him time, give him an opportunity to develop, and I think he can be a really special player coming off the wing for this Wizards team. Just think about the way people around the organization have talked about Will Riley, especially because what he did in the preseason. We saw that flash in the game against the New York Knicks where he went 7 of 11 from the field. Super efficient, looked really good as a playmaker as well. And that's another underrated aspect of his game, the 7 assists yesterday. I'll get more into his playmaking ability as well. But overall, I think this is the right decision to get him these reps with the Capital City Go-Go, because I want to see him possess some confidence into his game. I'm going to just look at the game logs where he's checked into some games. The only games he's played 10 minutes or more, that's 3 contests against Cleveland, New York, and Boston. Those were all games where the Wizards were getting blown out. And I know the Wizards are in a situation right now where there's going to be plenty of opportunities where they are getting blown out, and you'll see him play plenty of minutes in those opportunities. But right now, when you just look at some of the most recent games, Houston only checked in for 3 minutes in a blowout game against OKC. He only played 5. He only played 4 against Dallas, 4 against Milwaukee in the season opener. He's not getting enough opportunities at the NBA level as it currently stands right now, and he's a raw talent. At 19 years old, Will Riley, he spent just 1 year in college basketball out of Illinois, where he was the Big Ten Sixth Man of the Year, one of the best freshmen in that entire class. He came off the bench for that Illinois team, but kind of developed himself into this six-man starter hybrid role for that Illinois team because of how good he was as a scorer. He played in all 35 games, only made 8 starts, but he was still third on the team in scoring, 12.5 points per game for Illinois, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, 22 games where he scored in double figures. I think you're looking at a guy that's a really fun developmental project here for the Washington Wizards. And I talk to Chase Hughes a lot when I go over to Capital One Arena. And one of the things that he said to me is Will Riley's going to be a special player. He's going to be a special dude. And I had some conversations with Chase saying, what gives you this idea? Like, I can see it. I see the vision you have there. But he says just watching him within the practice facility and what others were saying around him, like the other players on the Washington Wizards when they speak to the media spoke really highly of Will Riley, despite him being such a young guy in this team. So that gives me a lot of confidence for what we can see out of a guy in Will Riley. Going back to the point I made with him not getting enough opportunities at the NBA level, he had only taken, let's pull up the totals here, 18 field goal attempts through the first 8 or so games that he played in this season. And 18 attempts just isn't enough for a guy that has a lot of offensive upside. When you have a guy with his level of ability to handle the basketball, to shoot from the outside, to get it done, penetrating to the basket, beating his man off the bounce, that's something Will Riley can do, but he's going to need to polish his game from that standpoint, find ways to improve himself, find ways to get his confidence up. It's just not going to happen now at the NBA level. I think if he actually got plenty of minutes for this Wizards team, I think he'd be fine. I think he'd have his ups and downs the way any rookie player would, kind of like we're seeing with Trey Johnson. I think Trey Johnson, obviously a much more NBA-ready player right now, so I'm not like trying to make any proclamation like that Will Riley would be out there as one of like the lead players as a rookie. I think it's smart, though, that you have him playing with the go-go, allowing him to build up his confidence, allowing him to see what he can do when he asserts himself. Because if you get him up here at the NBA level at this point, really, really early on in his career, just 12 games into an NBA career, he's not going to get the opportunity to showcase himself as a guy that can be an alpha type of player, that can do it all for this Wizards team. Now that you have him playing for the go-go where he can be the number one option for a period of time, I think you're looking at a really fun developmental process with him. I love what Will Dawkins has tried to build here, where you can get these project-type players like Will Riley later in the first round. I know the Wizards are probably going to pick 30th late in the first round this year, so maybe if that pick doesn't get moved at some point for the Wizards, you see them take another project, and then you got a couple second-round picks as well, where you can get these project-type players and send them to the go-go. But Will Riley, I think, is going to be a really good player for a long time here in Washington, and I'm not even just basing that based on one performance that he had with the go-go here. I think there's a lot more to the story, a lot of layers to his game that are super special. Brad Underwood, the head coach of Illinois, he said he was the second best tough shot maker he ever coached. This was a guy that was a freshman last year playing in the Big Ten Conference. I remember watching him last year because I was a guy at Maryland. I was calling Maryland games, got to see him play against Illinois, and he flashed for me when I saw him play. And I didn't really know a lot about his NBA draft projection at that point, whether he was going to be a guy that would actually come out in this draft, despite being a freshman and not even starting for that Illinois team. But once I did some more research and dug a little bit more into this guy and what Will Riley can be, I was like, okay, I'm a bit intrigued by this, because if we're really an organization that preaches development and how we bring guys up through the Capital City Go-Go, that's exactly what I wanted to see overall, is that we took a guy with super high upside like Will Riley. A lot of these picks that we've been making have been these upside players. I know in the second round, Jameer Watkins, he's a bit older, and that's a bigger swing, actually, to take a player that's a little bit older at 23, almost 24 years old from Jameer Watkins. He's got that experience to help you out on the defensive side of the basketball, and now he's another project that the Capital City Go-Go are trying to work the kinks out. When is Will Riley going to get his NBA opportunity? I think he's going to have plenty as the season goes on. That's really the bottom line for me. If we see him continue to play at this level in the Go-Go, I know it's just been one game so far, but I think he's really too good to be there at this point. I think he's going to shine in the majority of the games that he plays, and he's going to carve out quite the role for himself at some point in this organization. There's a lot to love within his game, from his reach. I think he's going to be a guy that when he puts on the weight through the weight room and through this program developing him, I think he can provide upside as a defender as well because of his reach and the wingspan. And then the offensive ability to kind of mold him into this like mini Keyshawn George type of player right now, because you can maybe use him as like this point forward type of role. If you develop Keyshawn and Will Riley to be such great playmakers for this team, these point forward de facto type point guards at some point, then you're looking at a situation where maybe you can swing and get a guy like Darren Peterson in this draft. He's not necessarily a true point. He does have the ability to break down the defense, but maybe more of a true two, kind of alongside Trey Johnson. And then maybe you're not as worried about not having a pure point guard on the roster, because we know that's kind of the main issue that this Wizards team is running into right here at this point. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to tell you when I think Will Riley's going to get those opportunities and what it'll look like eventually when he gets up here to the NBA level. The NBA season is heating up, and DoorDash has found the perfect way to keep fans in their bag all season long. Whether you're watching for the highlights, your fantasy team, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes every game night even better. DoorDash is the official on-demand delivery platform of the NBA, and they're celebrating with something called the Bag Drop. Every time an NBA player scores 50 points in a game, DoorDash drops 50% off your order with Dash Pass the next day. And you're automatically entered for a chance to win the ultimate fan bag. We're talking player-inspired drip, exclusive gear, and stuff you'll actually want. I love that it's not just food. You can get everything from snacks, drinks, to headphones, ice, even socks, all delivered. DoorDash has you covered for the late-night highlights, last-minute watch parties, and double OT fuel-ups. So next time someone goes off for 50, use promo code NBA50 the next day to get 50% off on DoorDash with Dash Pass. Plus, your shot at the bag drop. Dash Pass members only 50% off up to $10 the day after a 50-point game with promo code. Terms apply. No purchase necessary. Ends April 13th. Open to U.S. residents 21 or older. Visit DoorDashInYourBag.com for full details. In your bag all season long with DoorDash. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using DripDrop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power no matter what my day looks like. DripDrop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes of half the sugar of leading brands using a science-based formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of college and pro teams. I like using DripDrop as part of my daily routine. I mix a packet in the morning before I go to the gym or sometimes during that midday slump. It tastes amazing. My go-to flavor is the lemon lime, and it becomes my secret weapon for staying sharp and energized throughout these long days. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to DripDrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNBA. That's DripDrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNBA for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard and keeps your body and mind performing at their best with DripDrop. I'm so giddy right now. I'm psyched that Will Riley had this type of performance at the Go-Go. So many people were so frustrated yesterday to see the news that he got a sign with the Capital City Go-Go. And I was waiting for this to happen, honestly, because I was tired of seeing him not get opportunities at the NBA level. This guy needs to figure out who he is as a player. He has the innate ability to get to the rim, to play make for others. He's got skills to his game. He needs to polish it. He only played a year of college basketball. Like, everybody needs to keep that in mind. He needs reps. He needs reps. And if you're not getting that at the NBA level, you got to go down to the Go-Go and really develop. The Wizards have developed a pretty good track record so far with the Capital City Go-Go, developing these pieces. And by the time we get post-trade deadline, I think we're going to see a lot of Will Riley at the NBA level, and I think he's going to look really, really good. There's so many possibilities that you can think about with a player in Will Riley and how he's going to fit into this rotation. And I know sometimes injury is a big part of it. You never know, what the status is going to be of some of these guys moving forward, because we don't even know what this organization is going to look like 2 years from now. Who's going to be here, who's not, because the Wizards are in this asset gathering phase. You're trying to find as many assets as you can, see what works, see what doesn't, and try to build your organization through that. But one thing Will Dawkins, Michael Winger, Travis Schlenk, they've done throughout this draft, they've done their due diligence. They've been looking at this kid, Will Riley, since he was in high school. Dawkins gives a lot of credit to these grassroots scouts that go and scout players as early as high school to see what kind of, ability they have at that level. They start to keep tabs on players as young as 15 years old. And now that Will Riley, at 19 years old, and playing minutes for the Go-Go and finally getting an opportunity to showcase himself as an offensive player, this just means that the organization believes in him. You don't demote a guy because you don't feel like he contributes to your team right here. They demote a guy like Will Riley to the Capital City Go-Go because they know he can be a great offensive player in this league, but he needs the reps to get that done. It's exciting to think about. Like, we're in a prosperous era of Wizards basketball where we're finally, as an organization, doing things right in terms of player development. All of the best model organizations have developed their players this way. You gather assets, you develop them as the time goes on. You're rebuilding, you're losing plenty of games, but you're acquiring assets to build alongside. And with a player like Will Riley, and I think the ability he has as a playmaker that we saw early on in the preseason and some of the limited minutes he's had at the NBA level, I think that's something that's going to be really valuable to this team going forward, especially in the second half of the season. And I know it hasn't quite worked out for Bub Carrington trying to play in the point guard position, and that's why the team has kind of deferred to Keyshawn George in a lot of these situations. But maybe at some point, if things aren't working out with Bub, if he doesn't progress at all, I still hold out hope that he's going to work out in the future as a combo guard, maybe not necessarily in the role that they've thrown him into this year. If it's not working, in the second half of the season, hopefully you don't have C.J. McCollum here anymore. You trade him away for some assets. You don't have Chris Middleton anymore. Whether those guys are traded or bought out, I hopefully that's what happens, because I want to see the young guys like Will Riley get the opportunities to play. And maybe you see a possibility where you have Will Riley come in and kind of be your de facto point guard in certain situations. I don't want to necessarily see him doing that all the time, because I don't think it necessarily does him the most justice to have him playing in some kind of like lead point guard role. But maybe you see him mold himself into the Keyshawn George role a little bit, where you can kind of maybe take the weight off Keyshawn a little bit as you go down the stretch, because, man, it makes it that much more impressive for Keyshawn George, what he's done this season in terms of kind of filling into that role, because I don't think they anticipated this necessarily when they drafted him. Obviously, he was a point guard at Miami. They knew he had these skills, but you drafted this wing player because shooting was the biggest sell for him. And he's been great as a shooter, talking about Keyshawn George from the outside. But we haven't even got that opportunity to see him getting a lot of catch and shoot opportunities right now, because he's been the primary ball handler. Maybe at some point later in this season, Will Riley gets his opportunities post-trade deadline, and you see him get reps as a primary ball handler. Take the weight off Keyshawn George and see what Will Riley can do. I was really happy yesterday when we were talking to Danny Rouillet, and he gave us his perspective on what the Wizards are doing, how they did it with Alex Sarr, what they're doing right now with Trey Johnson, where it's kind of this like sink or swim mentality. Maybe some people don't agree with it, but I definitely hear Danny's point when he says you throw these guys out there and see what they can handle. And I feel like that's what we're going to get to with Will Riley eventually. He's not ready for that as it stands right now. That's why he's playing with the go-go. But he's getting his confidence up right there. He's seeing what he has as an offensive player and really getting the shots he needs to get. I brought it up earlier, only 18 shots through the 9 or so games that he's checked in. It's just not enough for a guy in Will Riley. When we get to the later part of the season, Will Riley is going to get plenty of opportunities for this team. And I think he's going to thrive. I think him playing with the go-go right now is a massive, massive step in his development. I think it's going to pay dividends in the end, and we might see some of those returns as early as this year. This is obviously a big-time project, talking about Will Riley, but I think right now, as it stands, it's going to be a pretty solid thing going forward for this Wizards team, just because of the abilities he has. And now you're in this situation here in Washington where you have so many different guys playing on the wing. You're just trying to see what works. And if Riley ends up being one of those guys, you're going to put yourself in a great position going forward for this organization. So, final message to you guys here to close out this Wizards wrap-up. I know it might be frustrating that Will Riley's not getting minutes at the NBA level and everybody wants to see the rookies playing a ton. This was what was best for Will Riley. He needs to get his confidence up. He needs to get his shots up. This was a good decision for Will Riley. I hope he continues to thrive down there at the G League level, and who knows, maybe it'll be sooner rather than later we see him back up at the NBA level getting significant minutes, because I think we all know we want to see that as we move along here. All right, I want to thank you for making Locked On Wizards, this Wizards wrap-up, your first listen every single day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day, the Washington Wizards. Let us know how you're feeling about Will Riley. Is he too good for the G League? I think he is, but this is the right decision. Do you agree? Let me know down in the comments. Wizards and Nets tomorrow. We'll be out there at Capital One Arena for the coverage. Stay tuned for it. For now, I'm Ben Strober for Locked On Wizards. We'll catch you later, DC family.